This week, President Trump heads to Beijing for a pivotal summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Iran war is likely to take center stage in that meeting, with Trump expected to call on Xi to persuade Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. This as the two leaders try to preserve a fragile trade truce and tackle points of contention, including tariffs, technology, and Taiwan.
President Trump is going into this meeting terribly weakened. And China, as you pointed out, is doing quite well because of their alternate energy investments, because of their coal supplies, because of their huge stockpile. So the president is going to Xi in his position of weakness, not strength. I don't expect there's going to be a lot obtained here because, again, Xi is looking at a president who's in a difficult situation.
Joining me now is former FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Michael Feinberg. He is an MS Now national security and intelligence analyst, and he also worked on some of the most high-profile counterintelligence investigations of China. And I understand, my friend, that you speak Mandarin, which I'm not going to ask you to do for this interview, but it's very impressive. That said, does the fact that Trump is heading into this summit needing China's help on Iran fundamentally weaken his leverage with Xi Jinping? Because Iran is China's closest partner in the Middle East. So how might Beijing play its hand in discussions on this conflict? Does China gain strategic advantage on other issues that are being discussed?
Yeah, well, China's gaining strategic advantage on a whole host of issues that are undermining U.S. national security and influence on the world stage. The sort of theme for the past 18 months or so of this administration has been, we can go at it alone. And as a result, we have been pursuing policies around the globe that our allies are not in supportive, that do not appear to really gain us any strategic advantage, like, largely abandoning our support of Ukraine for no real proffered reason whatsoever, or doing things that outright alienate the rest of the world, like strikes on unarmed boats in the Caribbean. And as a result, a lot of nations that previously would want nothing to do with China, because it is an expansionist authoritarian regime, are now looking to it to make bilateral agreements and deals that are going to weaken the U.S. economically, and that are also going to make other nations unlikely to support us if there ever was a hot war with the PRC. So the fact that we now need China's support to help with a war of our own making in Iran that is quickly becoming a quagmire, really, it's hard to see how there will be anything other than unalloyed success for China and Xi Jinping coming out of this meeting.
Semaphore reports that the Trump administration plans to invite CEOs from NVIDIA, Apple, Exxon, Boeing, and some other big companies to accompany the president to Beijing. So what does it tell you that the administration is bringing this delegation of America's biggest business leaders while still talking tough on China? Is it meant to put Americans' economic power on display while its economy is absorbing the painful effects of this war? Is it a power play?
I do not think it is a power play. I think it is a signal of what ultimately matters to this administration, which is fundamentally transactional, short-term transactional in nature. And what it signifies is that any business deal that brings short-term earnings for American corporations is going to get precedence over long-term strategic interests. Everybody plays nice in public, but the tech companies in the U.S. government have historically been sort of at odds with respect to the PRC. The United States government, cognizant of what a rising China means in terms of global power politics, has always wanted to sort of keep their technological sector at bay and therefore make it difficult for them to obtain U.S. technology. The tech companies, on the other hand, very much want access to the PRC's market, and they want access to the PRC's cheaper labor. And as a result, they've always gritted their teeth and complied with export control regimes of their products, but they've never been happy about it. And the fact that Trump is bringing them along as private parties into governmental negotiations very much signals to me that what is going to come out of these meetings is going to be very good for the short-term quarterly earnings of the CEOs and their companies that are tagging along, and potentially deleterious for stopping China long-term from gaining technologies that could ultimately be used against us.
Yeah, good analysis there. Thank you for presenting that. Let me pivot here because MS Now, Michael, reports that FBI Director Kash Patel ordered the polygraphing of more than 24 members of his security detail and other staff to look for anyone who may have leaked information about him to reporters after those multiple reports raising red flags about Patel's leadership. So how dangerous is it when career agents fear retaliation from the director himself, or the director doesn't apparently trust his colleagues? And what questions do you think he's going to face about this when he appears on Capitol Hill this week?
Well, the mistrust goes both ways. Kash Patel came into the job having written 4 books, 3 of which were for children, that just utterly denigrated and slandered the FBI community. And he has not really changed his tune since taking the position of director, and has actually repeatedly called the FBI a diseased temple. That is not the way to gain the trust of your people. And furthermore, if the allegations of the leaks are true, he's not behaving in, frankly, an adult manner that would do anything to ameliorate that distrust. So I imagine that he is using polygraphs to try and figure out who on his staff is talking to these journalists, obviously. But I think there's a couple things that he's not taking into account. First of all, the Atlantic Monthly story that has caused so much consternation reportedly had over 24 sources. If that's the case, you're not looking for a leaker. You're looking for the one person who might not be leaking. I mean, apparently everybody on the FBI's managerial team has their knives out for this director, and everybody is letting loose with all the gossip and rumors they can find. The fact that he's using polygraphs is dangerous. Polygraphs are a finite resource. You need somebody who's been trained, usually over a period of 6 months to a year, just in schoolhouse training before they get on-the-job experience, to run them. And there are only so many. Most field offices have 1, maybe 2. If you're using them to vet FBI headquarters staff to see who is leaking not classified or sensitive information about Kash Patel, but just simply stuff he finds embarrassing, that's a whole bunch of polygraphers who are not vetting individuals for their background checks to become agents. They are not helping out on criminal cases. They are not vetting national security sources. They are not helping out in counterintelligence and counterespionage investigations. It is essentially pulling a tool from the field simply to stop him from being embarrassed in the future.
We should say that Kash Patel denies all of the allegations in the reporting by The Atlantic. In fact, is suing them for $250 million, though The Atlantic stands by its reporting. Michael Feinberg, always good to speak with you. Thank you so much.